Guys, welcome to Method AF. I think it's been a long time in the making. My name's Sam Norman. This is Mike Lee. Hello, Mike. You can talk.
Hi. Okay, cool.
So we're going to be getting this on podcast, all sorts of audio, and we're also going to get it on YouTube so you can see our lovely faces. We could go over first what Method AF is, but I think it's extra important and probably best we get to know each other. We're going to do one full video. There's one problem. We have under about 55 minutes until our free trial runs out. So that is our target. If we suddenly disappear, then we will have to pay. So we want to try and get at least one episode in this free trial. So yeah, real talk. So we've come up with 5 questions for each other. We've thought, okay, bit of fitness, bit of life, just really get to know each other before we start going into sort of fitness, detail into sort of educational stuff, and also potentially talking with some of our athletes and clients. We've got some great things lined up for Method and AF. We haven't obviously explained what AF is, but we will do at some point, probably on the next episode, because we're still developing it, which is very exciting, as Mike will nod his head.
It's one of my questions for you. Is what projects are in the pipeline. So maybe we'll touch on it a little bit, but we'll leave most people guessing for now, and then we'll do a full episode on what's to come.
The problem I have is I have to be very careful with some of the things I say, because I don't want to get any sort of gossip out there, or because I know a few things and I know Mike knows a few things, so we have to be extra careful. We might leak a few things. We just got to be careful. So if I do go far, Mike, please stop me.
No, I'm pro the controversy. So I was actually talking to a good friend of mine who's in Singapore, and we were talking about potentially doing a whole podcast just around controversial topics.
Mate, why not? Why not?
Let's
there
do
you
it.
go. Second episode. We're going to get him on. Yeah. Okay. Right. So we've got 5 questions for each other. You can go first.
Okay. So my first question to you is effectively, how did you end up in the fitness industry?
Oh, so I have seen these questions, by the way, before. I could have had time to prepare, but I didn't. I was eating my breakfast when you sent them over to me, and that's why I'm like on this carbohydrate high. So I haven't had time to prepare for these. So this is kind of off the top of my head. Obviously, there's a lot of things I could say. I actually got into fitness at a really young age because I did a lot of motocross, and I was fat. I was very, very fat. Like, if you see pictures of me, in fact, I might show a picture right now of when I was about 12 years old on a small wheel RM85. I ran that suspension to the fucking ground. Like, I was heavy. I would do cycling probably from the age of 14, like in my room on this little, what are they called? Tracks. Those track things. On like a crappy little road bike, and just get rubber everywhere, which I used to tighten it so hard. Like, if you've got a tracks thing, you get it on the rear tire, and if you do it too hard, basically rubber just goes fucking everywhere. And your tire's done. And then I took it for a ride eventually outside, in the first corner I absolutely lost the rear end. I was like, why the hell is this tire fucked? But anyway, so I've been doing fitness from about, I want to say like 14 years old. I followed generally in the engineering route, where I very much went into mechanical engineering, motorsport engineering. And then I moved to London after that. I got involved in a hedge fund, and I basically loved CrossFit at the time. Like, I loved the idea of it, but I hadn't done it. I went and did it, and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. This is fucking awesome. Like, the first workout, I can literally remember the first workout that I went to that place. Like, we all remember that workout that you go to that place, and I think it was like 100 wall balls, or it could have been 150, but I don't want to go into the rhabdo territory. But it was literally like 100 or 150 wall balls. Every 2 minutes was like 5 burpees. I killed myself, and I absolutely loved it. But I think once I got into it, I'm that type of person that's 110% or nothing. And I loved the whole sort of approach towards training, how you become very connected with your clients, sort of the energy you give and the community aspect of it. And I was like, I need to get involved in this. I didn't have any experience, took a massive risk leaving a hedge fund and getting involved with a girl called Rosie and Alex, who gave me a great opportunity to get involved in their startup gym, which hugely appreciated. Got to learn how the gym opened up and everything else. And when I really sort of got involved at coach level, I saw like, crap, like I've developed a lot of experience from engineering point of view that I understand mechanics, I understand load distribution, I understand how the body moves, and it really gave me a different perspective on movement as a whole. Like I could be stating the obvious, like everyone might think like this, but for me, when I see movement, I see all the loads distributed throughout the body. I see overloaded areas, I see sort of mechanics, levers, everything, and it's just like this huge. It's almost like when I think of a human body, I think of a swing arm on a car. That's literally how I think of it. And for me, it kind of covers two things on why I got into the industry. One, because I naturally love looking at sort of engineering side and the mechanical side, and it really does create a unique perspective on understanding movement and helping people in their fitness. But also the aspect of supporting a client and taking them on this journey. And for me, I've always been a people's person. I've always been someone that likes to provide opportunities for other people, or likes to support people along the process and do what I can to get them from base level to exceeding their expectations and more. So I think that kind of answers the question. Does it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Am I going to ask you all 5 of your questions and we're going to get to know you, or do you want to go?
No, I need a break after that. Like, I need to breathe. So I'm going to ask you a question. So
I also did not prepare for any of the questions that you sent me. In fact, I'm not entirely sure I actually even opened the WhatsApp image that you sent me.
Oh, thanks, mate. So I've got 5 questions, and I'm obviously going to give you one, but these are a mix. So these, I mean, to be honest, real talk can get real dark. So if it does get dark, that's fine. We'll recover. We'll come back. So the first, because from my experience, I know that you learn a lot from the darkest times. Like the darkest times are at the time like you feel like shit, you feel like the world's against you, but there's always a fucking way out. There's always. So for me, and we all have a different way of getting out of it, and we all have a certain learning from it, and it's always great to share. So the first question for you is what is your lowest of lows that you have experienced, and what did you learn, and what did you build to be able to get out of it?
I love how I gave you a nice gentle, how did you end up in the fitness industry? And mine is, recollect your darkest time for us. Yeah.
On a great note.
Okay, so mine was actually relatively recently. And I guess for a lot of people, this pandemic lockdown has been quite tough. But for me, it wasn't so much the lockdown. Even though I am working in a relatively social environment, I'm not actually as extroverted as I appear. I actually don't mind kind of staying inside and not doing too much. So when lockdown kicked in at the very beginning, I was like, great. I'm not going to have to like surround myself with people every single day. I work better one-to-one with most people anyway. And the way I've always kind of done group programming in a class-based situation has always been like, okay, everyone gets like a mini PT session. And that's just generally how I approach a group class. I guess the past year for me, especially, I would say from maybe July onwards, last year, I just took on a lot of things that were not necessarily my responsibility to take on, but I felt compelled and because I am quite an empathetic person, took on a lot of responsibilities that I didn't really have any right in dealing with. And I won't go into too much detail because it's just too hard. It's just too easy for those closest to me to completely figure out the people and the situations that I'm talking about, and I don't really want to get into that in this podcast. But effectively, I kind of was a little bit manipulated by people who I thought were quite close to me, and it had kind of come off the back of last year, one of my best friends dying, and after that, not really being able to let anyone in. And then the first person that I would say that I really let in turned out to be quite manipulative. And that was quite a big hit to my confidence. And it also made me think, oh, actually, am I just a terrible judge of character? And so we had that. And then I was missing my old dog. I'd gone through a breakup in kind of March, April 2019, and I moved out of my house. I moved out, obviously, kind of moved away from that relationship, and like lost the dog as well. And I think come about December time, I was really starting to miss the dog, so I ended up getting a puppy that was already 6 months old, and effectively was rescue. I still miss her to this day, and I have fostered her since. But she was hard work, and a nice walk that people like to generally take with their dogs became one of the most stressful things ever. And it was a dose level of stress that I had to do twice a day. And so, along with kind of dealing with everyone else's responsibilities, plus the dog, and generally feeling a little bit lost and stuff, it all got very, very overwhelming. And then around October, November, early December time was just a very, very dark period for me. And I would say, like, I got to the point where I just felt like I'd hit rock bottom. And I can actually tell you when I hit rock bottom. It was 5 a.m. and I was on Clapham Common. And the dog had started acting up because she'd seen a fox. And when she acted up, it was just impossible to like bring her back to calm level. And it was just at that point where I was like, okay, I had some pretty dark thoughts followed by this. I mean, you can either stay here or you can do something about it. And you can start getting the things that you've let slip back into place. So at that point, I really wasn't training much. I hadn't really been looking after my nutrition. I wasn't moving at all on a regular basis. I wasn't sleeping properly, partly because I was stressed. And I just thought, okay, I spoke to my friend Chris about this, who is one of the owners of Manor. We were talking about like getting your mandatories in place. Like, what are your mandatories? And your mandatories are effectively, the things that keep you going. Like, you can drive a car around as hard or as fast as you want, but if you don't look after it, eventually things start to break. And if you ignore those warning lights or the service lights, then more shit starts to break. And it's just it's a snowball effect, and it will just get worse and worse. So I started putting the things in place that needed to happen. So the first thing was like, okay, I'm going to train. And at the time, my capacity for training was getting up and walking.
Yeah.
That's it. So I literally woke up in the morning and went for a walk about 5:30 a.m. It doesn't have to be that time for anyone else. It's just that's the time I wanted to go out because I was avoiding people, and Clapham is like a big brother kind of place. So I wasn't going to bump into anyone. And then I made the tough decision to. Oh no! So what? And then I started writing. So I started writing a lot of journaling. And then one day I was like journaling, and this journal entry was like 5 pages long.
Yeah,
so I was like,
Harry Potter book, didn't you?
Yeah. So I ended up deciding that I'm just going to write an entire book. And I think it ended up being 108 pages by the end, about 27,000 words. And I did it like in a week and a half. Just because I was like, right, it's just flowing, and it's everything that needed to come out. And I finished writing the first chapter, which was really about me growing up and I guess family. and realized that actually I did want to have a family. And the big thing was, I don't see where this dog fits into a family life. Unfortunately, I can't trust her around like a newborn. Like, mainly because, and she's met kids and babies before, and she never went for kids, but she runs around and is just completely spatially unaware. And I'm like, okay, how long does it take before she sends a kid flying? And at that point, it's just a no-brainer. The kid has to come first. So I made the difficult decision to foster the dog. And actually, my life started to get better from there because I'd removed an enormous stressor from my life. Like, I could now focus on myself rather than the animal. And like, just to target your question, I guess it was mainly, you hit rock bottom, or you feel like you've hit rock bottom, and you do have that decision to make, whether you're going to stay there and wallow in self-pity, or you make small changes. And as I said, like, when I said I wanted to training to me, that was literally, okay, go for an hour walk in the morning, accumulate 10, 12,000 steps in my day, do that for a week. Okay, I feel good now, or a little bit better. Now I have a little bit more capacity to maybe throw in a little bit more. So it might be, I'm going to do my 12,000 steps, plus I'm going to do a couple of intervals on the Concept 2 bike. Right, but nothing too strenuous.
Like, I feel like when people are in those times, it's very hard to get advice from other people, because advice to them may seem small and simple, whereas when you're in that position, something simple like getting on an assault bike is a massive fucking step. Like, you have to start with those small steps, and it's so hard to know. It's almost like you can jump, well, you can run before you can walk. You need to really understand those small steps, and it's hard because you have friends that want to give advice and like, look, just do this. And you're like, well, it's not quite as simple as that. I can't just put my phone down. I can't just go for a run. I struggle to walk. So I think you're right. It's understanding those small steps, and they are important.
Yeah, I think if you take something like training, you take training at its very most basic level. What is something you could do at the very most basic level? It's walking. That's it. You know, it's not hollow bodies, it's not planks, it's not adding any kind of technical aspect. And it's also, if you've been somewhere where you were athletically much higher and then you've dropped due to whatever, like, it's having the confidence to basically say to yourself, look, like, less than a year ago, I hang snatched 120 kilos. Like, in December, I'm looking at my training as, okay, I just need to go for a walk, you know?
See, that's your first. My first step is leg raises whilst watching Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the thing, you know, one of the other things that I did in the summer when I was actually better was trying to improve my aerobic capacity. But I don't like sitting on a bike for a long, long time. Like, if I, even now in my training, I'd probably say 2 10Ks a day would be a big thing. And that's 40 minutes of total work. And I know I have clients who will sit on the bike for 2-3 hours to develop big aerobic capacities. In the summer, I could do an hour, a little bit more, because I was watching the Michael Jordan documentaries. And I was like, I'm like, this guy's been through shit. Like, I can sit here and, you know, I can do 10 more minutes. And I'm not even looking at the screen, really. I'm just looking at the Michael Jordan doing his thing. So
hearing his voice.
Yeah, I think removing certain data points when you're in a tough spot is quite a good idea if you just want to focus on moving. I went for a run yesterday. I didn't take my phone, didn't take any heart rate monitor, didn't even take my watch. I just was like, I'm just going to run around and then I'll come back at some point. I have no idea how far you're going. Yeah, exactly.
I did that in Singapore when I went last year, and I took Laura with me, and we ended up going round because I wanted to see the Formula 1 track. We ended up going round with no phones at like 6:30 around like this museum and all of this around the lake. We ended up at the same. I was like, we're fucking lost. So as long as you know where you're going, then that's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, find the smallest, the most basic thing you can do, and target that first, and be consistent with that. And that potentially means that in your first week of your, I guess, recovery plan, you're not focusing on nutrition. You're not necessarily focusing on sleep. You're focusing on walking and getting that right. Because if you go, all right, I'm going to walk, I'm going to meal prep, I'm going to make sure I get 8-9 hours sleep. As soon as one of those things doesn't happen, you're like, oh, fuck it, I'm out. I can't do this. So it's just slowly building one of those things.
Even stepping back from that, and I always tell people it's okay to not do anything as long as you are thinking about what you're going to be doing next, or you're trying to work out what you're going to do next. Because, like, for example, me, I always like to be moving forward. I always have to be doing something. And the hardest thing for me has always been like, actually, do you know what? Sometimes stepping back and doing less is more. And sometimes stopping completely and reassessing is making more steps than what I was doing before, where every day I'd get up, I'd do work, do this, do that, and then I'd just drain myself. So I think even stepping back and being like, look, it's okay to not do anything, and if anything, the not doing part is the realization, and that is the foundations and the most important part.
Margo?
Yeah. That was good though, mate. I appreciate that, and that it takes a lot to say those sort of things, and
these better get easier from here, Sam.
What, for me or for you?
For me. So my thing is, like, you've probably been in London, or around the London area now, I guess, for about 10 years. So how many businesses would you say you started or co-founded in that time?
Do you know what? Like, there's so many ideas and so many things that I have thought of and played with, and it's kind of like, I'm going to be honest with you, very few have really driven any sort of success. Like, if at the end of the day, the one thing I've learned is to define success. Like, what is success? A lot of people that I've worked in so I used to work in a hedge fund, and a lot of people that I used to work there made money. They made money, but they were not happy, and they are still there to this day. Like 7-8 years, they've got crazy properties around the world and all of this, but they've spent 8-9 years just lost, and you don't know what's around the corner. So for me, it's I always like to see coming up with an idea as fun. Like, I enjoy it, and I enjoy the research element of it. Like, a lot of I'll go into detail as to the ones that stand out, and obviously very few have come into fruition and actually come about. But the very first idea I ever came up with was something called eWonder, and the concept is $1 million. Like, it's all of these ideas are priceless. Like, I'm telling you now.
Not to blow your own horn or anything.
But
I am basically Elon Musk.
These are fucking world life changing. But the most important thing from these ideas and progressing them is the learnings I took, and almost like the decisions I made after. So, for example, eWonder was when I was doing my engineering. It was when I was 19 years old. I think I even came up with ideas before then. I was on holiday with my parents. I was very lucky. I was in America. And I when I had spare time, I just thought about things. And I thought about this eWonder, and it was basically an app. And back then, apps were the in thing. And it was kind of similar to like Trustpilot, which wasn't about back then. It was like this product reviews you'd have for the app. You'd go into a shop, you'd scan the barcode, and all of these reviews would come up for the product. Yeah, pretty big deal. Back then, it was like, yeah, this is the thing.
That's the MyFitnessPal of products.
Yeah.
So right?
If there's any app developers out there, just get in touch. But the main thing from it was I challenged. So my dad's a big inspiration to me. He's done a lot. He's achieved a lot, and he's done some great things. And I would go to him and be like, I've got this idea, and he'd be like, well, write it down. Like, just write it down. Like, write down the business plan. I was like, what the fuck's a business plan? Like, I've just told you the idea. Why the fuck do I need to write it down? I started writing it down. And I remember being in the car on the way to Walmart, the best place in the world. If you ever, I mean, you've been to Walmart, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah, it's not the best place in the world.
Okay, we've been to the wrong Walmart. We were in the car on the way to Walmart, and I had this sheet, and I was like, he's going to get absolutely blown away by this. He's going to be like, shit, like, how much do you need? I'll help you. I'll get someone in. I'll get an investor. We'll sort it out. I was like, I'm going to be a millionaire by the age of 20 years old. I'm going to fucking make it. And I was explaining this business plan, and he absolutely ripped me to shreds. He didn't even give me anything, like not even a little positive. He was like, yeah, but what about this? What about that? What about the cost? What about these apps, this, or about competitors and all this? And I was just sat there. I was like, what? Like, you're my fucking dad. Like, where's my support in this? You're meant to be egging me on, like making me want to do it, but you're sat there telling me all these things.
This sounds like every parent's evening I had from the age of 4 years old.
But it's great. It builds you, and I basically went back to the drawing board. I was like, okay, let's try and develop this. And the purpose of this is that I understood that it's not just an idea. It's the idea is one element. You need to have resource. You need to have experience. You need to look at things with this mindset of, okay, there's a huge possibility that this will get absolutely destroyed and it won't succeed. So you've got to make sure it works. I obviously didn't take it any further than that. I then worked in a hedge fund. I wanted to get involved in fitness, got experience, and I basically got to the stage I was like, right, I'm ready to do something. I want to do something. So I left. I met a guy called Guillem, actually. And he was this Brazilian guy. I have a thing for Brazilians. Like, I seem to end up with them in the fitness industry.
Maybe don't tell Laura that.
So Guillem was ex-jiu-jitsu Brazilian, like quite short, very, very strong. Early days, he snatched 80 kilos like absolutely nothing. And back then, in your early days of CrossFit, you're like, holy shit, like 80 is a big benchmark. Whereas now, obviously, that's nothing. But that's not the point. And he had a lot of bodybuilding experience, and I got to see a different perspective of fitness. And we started building this sort of thing called Elements, which is like a programming company. We did like a business plan, and this was years and years and years ago, and it was this algorithm that I put together from what I learned in engineering and also other things, that basically you put in your sort of framework, and then it would blab out your program, essentially. I ended up doing other things, so that was one plan that did not come about. But I think a lot of things that I've learned and going to the next project is you can only get so far, and this is my approach and how I like to do projects. You can only get so far on your own, and you can't be the best at everything. Like there's a huge difference between extremely qualified and driven to be focused on marketing, and then there's a huge focus on being driven on sales, a huge focus on being driven on product development and everything else. And in order to really drive something special and meaningful, you need to be able to have experience and resource in each of these elements. And I think for me, I learned that along the way. And unfortunately, I spread myself too thin when I got involved with WIT, and I opened up the gym. And I got Gus involved, who is a guy that I actually met after Guillem, who was very passionate and driven to opening up a gym as well. We did all sorts of YouTube channels, we did all sorts of things, and we got involved with a retail business that was succeeding hugely, and I spread myself too thin across trying to do too many things at once. Normally when you open a gym, you open a facility, you don't have a shop above you with like Metcon launches on the first day you open, Nano launches, which is great. Like I didn't have any problems with that, but it was really challenging what I'd learnt, where it was very much about building a team, spreading resources, and really trusting each other to make it work. This was like all hands on fucking deck. You have your business is not generating any cash at the moment. You've got involved with this retail business that has huge expectations in terms of marketing, in terms of events and resource and everything. And that was very, very stressful and took a big part of my life. After that, to be honest, was probably when I enjoyed myself the most, because that was like, right, okay, I'm not going to spread myself too thin. I'm going to enjoy myself. And I actually came up with an idea. I did two things. First of all, I did programming and consultancy, which I absolutely love to this day. And that's obviously why you and I work together. And it's great fun. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. And we've got great things planned. And that was kind of like something that happened organically and evolved from when I left WIT. And the consultancy stuff that I do, I love supporting coaches. The coaches I work with are hugely, like, they're motivational to me in a way, because they're so driven, and I tell them, I give them the resource, I give them direction, they absolutely smash it, and they do more and beyond. Coaching is obviously a passion that I absolutely love. But two projects that I did go into, one was called Stitch. None of these have developed further, because when you understand the resource and effort needed to develop it, it's a lot. And Stitch was kind of one that I really heavily got invested in, until I was like, do you know what? Keep it simple. And put simply, Stitch was basically an app that I met a few people. It was basically an app that you took a photo and you could sell it to PR agencies. And it was basically an app that you went on and you searched for something. It showed a load of images. It's kind of like Shutterstock and all these other photo things, but it was for the people. Like, if I took a photo on my phone, I could upload it to the app. I put a price on it. So for news, PR, all sorts of stuff, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, so there's been a lot of projects, and I know the question wasn't really the learnings from it and how I've evolved, but for me, it's understanding the resources needed to drive your idea. And there's no harm in coming up with ideas. Like, I fucking love it. I do it every now and then if I think of an idea. The most important thing is that you don't spread yourself too much. You do not be a yes man to the point that you're working on 3 or 4 projects and you're giving one project 25%, one project 50%, another project 25%, because it's your work on the line. And for me, like, I'm 110% or nothing. So I would not be able to give 25-75. I would not be able to give 50-50. I would give 100 and 100. Where, like, even from the WIT days, I was trying to do far too many things. I mean, even now, I'm balancing method and obviously some of the consultancy stuff, and also supporting a bike business, which is difficult. But I've been able to manage that accordingly, which is not easy. I think that answers your questions. There's a lot of projects, a lot of ideas, and I'm very lucky to have people around me that I can bounce ideas off. And if there's one thing I tell you that London provided me, it's people. Like, people are the biggest resource that we take for granted.
Yeah, my parents are always like, "Why are you still in London?" Because they hate London. They hate just the amount of people. They live in a small town on the border of Switzerland and France, and there's a good chance you could go for a 30-minute walk and not bump into a single person. Whereas I can't even get out my front door without bumping into someone, you know. But it is literally, it's the land of opportunity. It's, if you want to create something, there is someone somewhere within probably 2 square miles that you can probably help you achieve that. It's just, everything's very fast flowing. So I think if you're going to fail at something, you fail quickly and you move on to the next thing, rather than like you said, giving it 25% and dragging it out for like months and years and it never coming to fruition. Let's go. Your turn. Go for it.
Just on that, just on that quickly, you say failure. I feel like it's very hard to know when to move on. And I feel like there's 2 people that get involved in businesses. There's the easy quitters, and there's people that balance the pros and cons, their lifestyle, and know what the right decision is. Because I always find like a project only fails when you decide to stop. That's the only time that it fails. Like I know deep down that I could still be driving my very first project that I came across. Like, who knows what I could be fucking minted, absolute billionaire for all I know, if I had have continued that basic idea and driven it to the ground and just absolutely done everything I can to try and drive it. I think failure is a really interesting topic. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future, but I almost feel like you have to be so certain that you are happy to close that door, and you have you've absolutely understood the pros and cons. You're ready for that next step, and it's almost like people decide to close that door because of wrong measurables. Like, people close doors because they haven't given expectations, and people set expectations on the wrong things. Like, the first expectation is money. Like, people are always like, I'll close the door because it's not bringing enough revenue for me. Well, are you putting in the correct resources? Are you doing the right things? Are you making the right decisions? Have you got the right people involved? Are you making mistakes? And I do feel that people set wrong measurables on success, and they close doors because they just can't handle it. And I think that's probably the hardest thing to know. But anyway, we're going to cut this to 3 questions.
Well, we can do the 5. We just got to cut it to like 3-minute answers.
Okay, we'll try. But I see our free trial coming very close. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done a 5-minute. I shouldn't have done a 5-minute test run yesterday with me talking to myself, just doing stupid things to the microphone.
You going testing. Yeah, I watched that a million times. All right, what's next?
Okay. Actually, I'm going to ask this question because this isn't it's not going to require a long answer. It might do, and it's obviously related to where we ended up with my question. Success. How do you define success, and what is it to you? Like, today, what is success to you?
This is a relatively easy one for me because I've thought about it a lot. And it was one of the questions that I did actually read that you sent me.
Hey, so it's at the bottom as well. I can't even read it myself. How did you read that?
I don't know. Siri's just started talking to me. So for me, success is very simply being able to look back on something and either having learned a lesson from it or being proud of it. So if you've made a mistake on something and then you continue to make that mistake in your next project or your next move, then that is a mistake and you're going to regret doing that. So have I had success in everything I've done? No, because there's times when I've repeated the same mistake because I've been like, I'm pretty sure I'm right, when actually I was wrong. And it's only when you've gone, okay, why was I wrong? Let's move on from that you can then go, okay, I've successfully learned from that and I can carry that into the next thing. So for me, success is just being able to look back with very few regrets. So even if I get to like 80 years, if I get to 80 years old and look back and I'm like, I've got a ton of regrets, it's probably not, I haven't really lived life successfully. Now, it really depends on your values, I think. So if you attach success to money, then that's fine, as long as everything you're doing is actually fulfilling that goal of making money. So you may, let's say you get to 40 years old and you look back and you're like, well, actually, when I was 20 years old, my goal was to make a million quid. And I've done that. That's successful. And I think it's fair to say that your perception of success can change over time. And it's not that your perception of success is wrong. If someone else out there, like pretty much everyone who works in a bank or a hedge fund, is not there for quality of life. They're there for money. Like, you don't get into a hedge fund because you fancy a good quality of life. And that's fine.
Bonus time in the year is a very emotional period for bankers. and investors.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, I lived with one of my old clients and good friends, and his bonus was probably what I earned in a year, and he'd have like the happiest day ever, and then followed by nothing, and just back to low level. It's like this massive dopamine hit where you got rewarded, and then back to low levels again. And yeah, it's fine. Like, your definition of success is different to everyone, but it should align with your values. So if money is not a huge value to me, then success should not orientate around money.
Yeah, it's so sad. It's great, and I think what you said, how your perspective on success changes based on your situation. The people you surround yourself with is a massive influence on your perspective on success, and is really sad because when I used to work in the hedge fund, it was all, like you said, money driven. Obviously, leaving my goals, my perspective changed, and I made that choice based on the fact that my measurables of success back then were running me down. They did not suit who I was. And the saddest thing was, I remember, because when I opened up the gym, I think it was 4 months into opening, there was a guy I used to work with, Tom's his name. Lovely guy, like absolutely loved him. He was 2 years younger than me, and he got on board. He was an analyst, and within 4 months he got offered a contract to go work with an American bank that provided reports also for other businesses, and he was offered a contract of £125,000. He was 20. Oh, how old was he? He was 21, 22. So literally straight out of uni. I left as he left. He came past the gym, so this would have been like eight years after or something like that. And he was absolutely destroyed. And it was really sad because I went to get a drink with him, protein drink with him down the road, and all he could talk about was money. And it really saddened me because he all of his life was based around money coming in, money going out, where he was putting his money. He was explaining about how he was buying tractors and farms and all of this, and which is great. Like, if you work in banking and you're putting your money into farming and tractors, fucking awesome. If you're putting it into drugs and all sorts, no, do not believe in that. But he was still telling me, like, he would literally be working overtime on the weekends, sleeping. He would get a taxi from the office at 12 midnight to home. He would get a taxi back to the office at 4 a.m. every fucking day. And all he would talk about was money and his shitty lifestyle. And it's so sad to see. And do you know what? Good on them. I mean, people who obviously are able to deal with that capacity, and their perspective on life and success is in that way. But I suppose, from our perspective as coaches and people that work with people who have driven themselves to the lowest of lows in life, in their training, in everything, it's very sad to see. And the hardest bit is getting them to try and see the light and like you said earlier, make those small steps. Right. Your question.
In 3 minutes, this is what I'm going to give you. Your biggest mistake.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Do you want a mistake?
I want a mistake, not a lesson. Something you were like, oh yeah, well, I fucks that.
Oh, God. There's so many. Okay. My biggest mistake, and this is, I'm trying to really look at a big one. My biggest mistake is the fact that when I was younger, I went through a lot with my family. My biggest mistake is that I was very selfish about my own emotions and not about others. That was my biggest mistake. And I feel like, so I had a lot of things go on in my family, like years and years ago. Put it simply, we lost 2 family members, and I took on a younger brother, essentially, he's my step uncle. work that out. Like, that is how fucked it was. But I have no, like, it built me to who I am today and what I've achieved. But my biggest mistake was the fact that I was so selfish, and I was 7, maybe 9 years old. I treated it like a sleepover, and I was so selfish about my own emotions and how my parents treated him like a son that I almost got very jealous. And I wish that if I could go back in time, I wish I could say to myself, like, look, they're going through a lot of shit. Like, we're doing this for good intentions. Leave your fucking ego out the door and do what's best for this family, and realize
it's hard to tell a 7-year-old that, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but do you know what? Like, I look at it and I always think, like, I caused a lot of crap for my parents. And do you know what? You generally realize later on, like, what your parents are to you and how much they've done. I mean, you might not. You might be in another position. It's completely dependent on who you are. But for me, that is my biggest mistake. And the fact that I can still look back at it, and I knew that I looked at things. I knew that I broke things down in my head. But you know when you're like 9 years old and you've got that little devil in your head, and you're like, nope.
I was good
my
at
parents.
I was good. I was a good kid all the way up until about 13, and then I got suspended from school.
Why is it that I can imagine you as a little kid with your socks up? And
I was cheeky. I was cheeky, but I never really did much. Like, I always like a little bit of back chat to teachers and stuff. The only bad thing I did was I set a kid on fire at the age of 13, and I got suspended for it.
Oh, God.
In all fairness, it was his idea. Like, he was a good friend of mine. But it's a long story. But yeah, that was the worst thing I did.
I'm trying to think of a mistake that was like a serious mistake that I was like, fuck, put my hands up. Like, I messed up. I think there was a time. In fact, there was one mistake, but it's not really a mistake. If I think of something, I'll blab it out.
Yeah,
I've lost my cool over the years, and I've made a fool of myself in front of people and in business. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Was that 3 minutes? Yeah, that was 3 minutes. Right, we got one more question.
And you got 4
and
minutes.
I think this is...
Go.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I can rapidly answer this.
I'm going to ask you the same. I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm going to...
Oh, I was so prepared for you to answer
open
me
up.
something,
let's make
something else.
No. Let's in 3 minutes, give me a simple answer to this, and we'll obviously discuss it later on. One-to-one programming and group training. Go.
Okay. Easy.
3 minutes.
All right. Group training, if you are following a group training program that is designed or has been built by an athlete or a coach that coaches a top-level athlete. These programs are effectively funnels. And so they are designed for you. It's very easy. If I basically say, right, what is this top-level athlete doing? Let's all do that. Whoever at the end of this programming block is still left and not injured and has survived is a resilient human being. Now, I'm like, okay, well, they've probably got good genes to handle some more one-to-one stuff. So I might reach out to them. Now, this is the problem with group programming, is that it's not always going to be perfect for each individual. And you have to be educated into understanding how to attack that program itself. So if I see 30 snatches, 30 box jumps, 30 deadlifts, and an 800-meter run for 5 rounds, which is horrible. If I've not snatched before, I need to understand what is the point of a snatch. It's an explosive hip extension movement. Could I replace that for a Russian swing or maybe an American swing? Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Is this going to help me get fitter? Absolutely. Is it less technical, so I'm probably going to get injured less? Yes. Deadlift. Do I even have the capacity to move whatever weight has been prescribed? Yes or no? Is it going to help me get fitter, or am I just burning myself into the ground? Again, you have to adapt it to to yourself. So just because someone else is doing it in the room, and just because you can deadlift 100 kilos, doesn't mean you should do it for 30 reps. So group training is a fantastic way to get people in and moving, but there should be an understanding of why they're doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
One-to-one program, any good one-to-one program is going to have a constant coach-client contact, so you understand how they're feeling either on the day or their previous history, their previous injuries, how long have they been training for in general, and it paints a much bigger picture. So if someone's athletically gifted, but they've only been training for a year, if they just happen to be a very coordinated person, but they have only been training for a year, just because their clean and jerk or their snatch looks good doesn't necessarily mean that I should be giving them a ton of them. So it's about understanding the stimulus and the reason someone's getting involved. Group programming, especially in a class, is an exceptional way to be sociable. Like, I'm moving house pretty soon, and one of the first things I'm going to do is actually look for a CrossFit gym, because it's a really easy way for me to bond over something that I enjoy doing, which is not necessarily competitive CrossFit. It's just training. And I'm going to meet other people who also like training. So even though I'm going to have a home gym, I'll probably go there on the weekends because it's a good way for me to be sociable. That's one of the best things that has come out of CrossFit is, and actually one of the owners of CrossFit Shapesmiths, I heard him saying once to a new member, Shapesmiths is the solution to London's biggest problem, which is loneliness.
Yeah.
Didn't even speak about a gym. And that was an exceptional line that I'll never forget.
Yeah. I moved to London not on my own. I moved to London with a partner who left me after 2 months of moving to London. I was lonely. I knew no one. I worked in central London, but we hung out a little bit, but it wasn't like a proper life. I did free trials everywhere for training, for exercise, for everything. Just every single type of exercise you think about in Clapham, the dome of Clapham. And when I did CrossFit, my life started, my London life started. And it's so, like, now that I look at it, if I hadn't have done CrossFit, fuck knows where I'd be. Like, I don't know if I'd have friends in London or how I'd create them. I hate to say it, the way I was trying to make friends was through something like bloody Tinder. That's the only way I was meeting new people, which is not a healthy way to meet new people. So for me, CrossFit is a huge driver for finding a life and socializing, and that is the biggest thing that I succeeded from starting CrossFit.
Yeah.
And a more important thing, whilst you're talking, we are no longer on a free trial.
Did you upgrade it?
I upgraded it because I didn't want to risk it that if things went on that we wouldn't be able to finish. So we're no longer on a free trial, so we have no time limit. We have 20 hours, so we have 19 hours left.
I'm not sitting on a podcast for 19 hours with you.
no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, I think that was fun. That was good. I think
it's good.
It was good to kind of ask random questions to each other, and obviously it's important to, and we kind of do these podcasts for our current community, our current members, and obviously people that want to get to know us. But obviously if we can help people with small decisions and learn from the mistakes and failures that we've had, then hopefully we can make a difference to someone, and most importantly have some sort of entertainment from it, which I mean, I find it's quite funny listening to some of your stories, not the dark ones, but so we've got some great podcasts lined up. We've got some really exciting things lined up for Method, and we're going to explain what AF is about. And thank you very much if you've got this far into listening about the podcast, and we'll release another one soon. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, cheers, Sam.
Thank you, me. You're welcome. All good. Right. Till next time.